Last Friday on Fox News, U.S. Senator Lindsey Graham went on the screen to tell Americans what was really at stake in the war and the war in Russia between Russia and Ukraine, why it was so important for Americans to follow behind this and stay engaged with it. Now, one of the things that he said in there, actually, most of the things he said in there were disconnected from reality, like nearly everything he says related to this war. But there may have been one point, one critical point where he was telling the truth.
This war is about money. People don't talk much about it. But you know, the richest country in all of Europe for rare earth minerals is Ukraine. $2 to $7 trillion worth of minerals that are rare earth minerals, very relevant to the 21st century. Ukraine's ready to do a deal with us, not the Russians. So it's in our interest to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. It's the breadbasket of really the developing world. 50% of all the food going to Africa comes out of Ukraine. We can make money and have an economic relationship with Ukraine to be very beneficial to us with peace. So Donald Trump's going to do a deal to get our money back, to enrich ourselves with rare earth minerals, a good deal for Ukraine and us, and he's going to bring peace. And Biden's been a disaster when it comes to containing bad guys.
Ukraine Listen, that was one of the most remarkable things
about it
that I've ever seen, and I've seen a lot of stuff from Lindsey Graham, but you know, he unwittingly, I think, told the truth, or maybe better, not unwittingly, but not realizing just how horrific him admitting the truth was. Now, as we've shown here many times, that famous picture of Zelensky in December of 2023, when all of the senior leaders and CEOs of all the different Lockheed Martin, General Dynamics, all these folks that were meeting with him and how happy everybody was. I mean, literally the whole group looks like a school picture. Everybody smiling, not even the slightest pretense that we're talking about a war here where hundreds of thousands of people have been killed, possibly in the millions already. Millions more have fled, the devastation to the country. And, not even the pretense that we're going to somberly do whatever we need to do to win this war. No, it was all about the cash. It was all about that. And now you hear Lindsey Graham outright, directly, flat out saying, this is about money. This is about us getting our money back and enriching ourselves, is his very specific quote on there. And I just find that incredibly reprehensible as a human being and certainly as an American. And I know most of the time in here we talk about the pros and cons of the war or the various aspects of what's actually going on and look at the actual policies. But this one, we're going to kind of take a higher level look, or look lower, as the case may be, here into what he's talking about, because it gets to the core of what is America, what is our role in the world, what is our heart, where are we as a nation and a spirit. Where is the spirit within us? Because we have told ourselves so many times that we're the indispensable nation. We're the nation that relies, the world's rely on, the nations of the world, that we bring peace. We're the country that provides the leadership of setting the stakes. We believe in peace. We want to be at peace with everybody, and we're willing to use force if necessary to help the little guys. Those are some of the common themes that we have claimed throughout. And I'll just tell you that when I joined the military for the first time in 1985, it wasn't about enriching some corporate leader. It wasn't about saying, hey, what can I do to help Lockheed Martin make a lot of money, or the CEOs of these companies, or senators who may want to make money on getting lots of cash from some of these people. And so I want to do the sport. What can I do to help that? That was never in my mind. In fact, the reason why I signed up was because out of a patriotic duty to defend our country, because I care about the people in our country and I want to see them stay safe. And I was willing to put my life on the line if necessary, and went to combat zones 4 times in my career to do exactly that, as best as I understood at the time anyway, that what I was doing was actually helping keep America safe. Now, certainly I know that in retrospect, many of the missions that I went on then were not about keeping America safe, but were about, keeping access to oil and any number of other things. But I joined the military out of a desire to keep my family safe, to keep your family safe, and to prevent, would-be bad guys from around the world of using force unethically to get their own political objectives or whatever means they may have. Is that I wanted to be part of something bigger than myself, something great that would actually be a force for good. I know that sounds kind of corny sometimes, and I mean, I remember the U.S. Navy for a while actually used that as a slogan in their marketing campaigns, that be a force for good or whatever. Kind of rolled my eyes a little bit when it said it then, but that was in truth why I joined in the 1980s. This is when I first enlisted as a private in the U.S. Army, and ever since that time, even when I was serving, actually, in some of these combat zones, especially I remember in Desert Storm, after our big battle, the 7-3 Easting, the big tank battle I've told you about before, we were sent up north into a place called An-Nazariya, deeper up into Iraq, because Saddam Hussein, despite what he agreed to shortly after that battle, to ceasefire and do a bunch of other stuff, that he wasn't doing it. So they actually sent the 2nd Armored Cavalry Regiment deeper up into Iraq to put pressure on Saddam Hussein, et cetera. And I remember, seeing with my own eyes firsthand the ramifications of a lot of the war, some of the things that Saddam Hussein had done when his forces went into Kuwait, and some of the destruction and damage there, and some of the destruction of our Air Force. There was the Talil Air Base in southern Iraq, where we were basically occupying. And I saw the devastation of our Air Force there, and I saw a lot of the kids and women and children that were scrounging, trying to find anything to boot. And I saw how destructive and horrible wars were, and I thought, man, what we need to do is get these wars over with and prevent them from having to be fought, because the carnage on the human beings is just so high. But you have now then that has all just been put to the lie, or maybe a better, more accurate way to put it is that now that what may have been noble and virtuous, to at least to some folks before in the past, is now melting away. Because I just showed you Lindsey Graham, but there certainly are plenty of others. And I think over the months that we've shown you, no shortage of many people, senior officials who got up and tell you why we should have, like, for example, during that whole process last year to get that $61 billion aid package to Ukraine, which everybody said could be the difference in the war. Didn't make any difference to the war effort, but it sure made a lot of people in the United States rich. And I showed everybody from Jake Sullivan to the President of the United States to Secretary of Defense, the Secretary of State, all of them went on TV at one point or another and really emphasized how this was all about American jobs and how this was going to help our economy out and all that, as though they think that, hey, it's a point that American people care about, not so much helping the Ukraine side out, but if they think that they get something out of it, if our country can financially benefit, then they'll continue to support the war. And we know that certainly people would get support from that. But I just find that immoral and reprehensible, because of the devastation and the destruction has been wreaked on the people of Ukraine. Now, as I've told you many times, this war could have been prevented outright. It could have been stopped a long time ago. It could have been prevented. I mean, you can go all the way back to 2015 with the Minsk Accords. That could have prevented any war. If the Ukraine side and the Western side had just said, yeah, we're going to implement this and we're going to just move forward the best we can, there would never have been a war. If in December 2021, Putin offered a less good deal for the Ukraine side than was the case in the Minsk Accords, but still it would have left Kiev literally in charge of everything except for the Crimea. But we didn't take that. Of course, the March-April 2022 deal in Istanbul could have ended the bloodshed after only a couple of months. The whole thing could have been over then. No, we didn't want it then. We didn't want it in November of 2023 when the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Mark Milley, went on public television and told the world, hey, this is your moment to get a negotiated settlement that's favorable to Kiev, because time is not on your side and Russia is tooling up for war. They're getting more people. He correctly called it. This was the time. We didn't want to have anything to do with that. Nope, we don't want it. We want to continue the war because we want our own things to play out. And apparently cash is one of those things. And I want to take it's much more than even just immoral and unethical, although that is enough. I want to look at three specific things that Lindsey Graham said in there, and I want to explain why this is such a problem. And I'm telling you this because at least I didn't see anything published that the interviewer of that clip brought up any of these points. And I haven't seen anything other than people mocking Lindsey Graham and Twitter and several other places for the immorality of it. But I'm telling you, there are some very practical things that were wrong with it as well, things that we should really care about. For example, one of the things she said, he says, we need to get our interests taken care of to make sure that Russia doesn't take over the place. and I'm like, what planet are you living on? It doesn't matter what you want, and to tell Russia to take over the place. Let me show you something here. This is kind of really graphic to demonstrate this. Let's see if I can find it real. I think it's this one right here. This is the Institute for the Study of War, which, as I always say, is really good with maps and really bad with analysis. They're one of the big supporters of these wars, and they want it to keep going because I think they care about the money as well. But you'll see here, this is the map of the Kursk area, where all this is stuff that after August 6th, the Ukraine initially captured all this territory. Now you see every time I show you this map, there's more and more red where Russia's taking it back, smaller blue. So everything is getting squeezed down. The whole thing was a pointless operation. It accomplished nothing for the Ukraine side except for the loss of thousands of pieces of military equipment and tens of thousands of troops. But then you just keep going down the list, and there's the Kharkov area. This is around the Luhansk area. Everywhere you see more and more Russian red. And then the same here in the Donetsk area. Some of the specific areas, all these maps. So just everywhere you roll down, more and more Russian progress. Everything you see on this map shows that the Russian side is winning. So it doesn't matter what you want to say. It doesn't matter what you would hope to be the case. The fact is, Russia has the possession of the ground. And in a war, what matters is who has control of the ground. It doesn't matter even who has the best air force or the best air defenses, though those are crucial factors to have in a war. But if you don't own the ground, you own nothing. All you're doing is blowing a bunch of stuff up. You can't win the war. Russia owns the ground. So in order to turn that around, you would have to eject them physically from the territory. So when you hear Lindsey Graham saying Trump's going to come in and make a deal and that we're going to get all this stuff, he hasn't explained how getting a deal is going to get Russia off the territory it has. Maybe he's not aware. Perhaps he was sleeping. I don't know. Maybe he was checking his bank records or something. But in 2023, the Ukraine side spent half a year in preparation and then half a year in execution to try and push Russia off of that territory to retake it, and utterly failed. Completely and totally it was destroyed, all their offensive capacity. Didn't even make it through the first of 5 defensive Russian lines at any point. They got to it in one place, never penetrated it. And now, ever since that time, starting in about October and November of 2023, the Russian side has been on this now more than 12-month methodical movement to the west, i.e. taking more and more territory. So when you hear Lindsey Graham saying, yeah, Trump's going to come in and make this deal, what does Trump have to negotiate with? Well, I mean, what weird, twisted mentality does Lindsey Graham think that Trump is going to walk in and that Putin's going to go, okay, sure, we spent, by that time it'll be 3 years of war, basically. And we have captured all this territory. We're continuing to capture territory. We're continuing to kill Ukraine troops in large numbers every day. And now we're just going to hand it back to you? I mean, what kind of lunacy is that? Whoever takes something and then just hands it back so someone else can benefit. I mean, that is so ridiculous, but no one challenged him on that. One of the other things that Graham said is that we can make money on this war. That's an actual quote. We can make money with the war, and that he'll then bring peace. But listen, if you don't win the war, then they're not gonna do anything about changing the outcome of it. There won't be any peace. The only way we can get peace is available right now, as it was available in December 2021, as it was in 2015, as it was in April 2022, November 2022, all of those times is a negotiated settlement. to acknowledge that map I just showed you, the ground truth reality. Ukraine side their military is absolutely gutted. It's devastated. Now they have people in uniforms. It's not an army. They can slowly lose ground. That's it. They cannot hold ground, and they definitely cannot retake territory. They don't have the capacity. It's gone. It's irreparably gone. It'll never come back in our lifetimes. It'll take a generation after the war to recover mentally and emotionally and financially from that, from the psychology of the loss, and then to create new members of the armed forces, which take years, plural, to build. It won't happen in our lifetimes, or at least not in this generation. So that doesn't exist. Therefore, the only rational thing to do is seek a negotiated settlement. One of the other things that he said that Donald Trump is going to, quote, get our money back, and that we're going to, another quote, enrich ourselves. Now, listen, that is, aside from the fact that you can't obtain these things, you can't get them, you can't get the territory back. So you're not going to get control of these trillions of dollars that he claimed are in the ground and rare earth minerals and other kinds of things. It's just physically impossible. But just think about the mentality that he's exploring there, and he's telling people about. We want to enrich ourselves off the blood and the backs of dead Ukrainians. So it is time right now to just rip back the shroud of secrecy and fakeness that we ever care about the Ukrainian people. We didn't care about the Ukrainian people. Lindsey Graham's been saying this for a long time. In fact, Gary, if you can pull up that one there from just this past August, when he went there with Senator Blumenthal, and he went on the ground to say, hey, war is a really good thing. Watch how gleefully he's talking about, not about winning the war, but about financial issues.
The weapons that they're using here are made in America, creating American jobs. And every weapon we give the Ukrainians are used to full effect. We've learned a lot about our own weapon system by providing them to the Ukrainians, what works and what doesn't. So I'm hoping that in December we can have another infusion of weapons provided by the United States to help the Ukrainians fight in 2025.
He is gleeful about this war going on to 2025. He wants it to go into next year. No concept at all of how wars are won or the cost to the Ukrainian people. Now, instead of sitting there in the beautiful city of Kiev, which the Russians have curiously almost left untouched with just a handful of strikes here and there, very targeted, but they've left the majority of the city open by people who've been there that I've talked to. You would never even know there's a war going on there. Let's see him go to the Donetsk area, the Luhansk area, or the Zaporizhia front, and then let him actually get up to the front line where, you know, the artillery is actually falling, where you can feel the impacts of it. Let's see then how eager he is to say, yeah, let's keep going. You may also recall earlier this year, he went over to Ukraine and just was emphatic about telling the Ukrainian people, man, y'all just keep on coming in, joining up. It doesn't matter that y'all are all dying. Just keep on going. It was unbelievable how he's doing that. The part of this that's unbelievable, though, is that rarely does anyone push back on this. Why is there not like a lot of American officials from both parties saying what you're doing is reprehensible? Maybe because they're fine with it. Maybe that's the reason it's become so normalized. No one seems to think about it. They keep going on over and over. And listen, I don't want to hear any more of this nonsense about how America is the indispensable nation, about how we are a force for good and what we're doing. There's no good here. It is absolutely math that you can look at and say, there's no path to victory here for Ukraine ever. It's gone. So since you're not doing the only rational thing to end the war and end the suffering, that means you don't want to. That means that you're not interested in it. And because you don't give a damn about the Ukrainian men, women, and children who are dying as part of this war. That you don't care about the cities that have been reduced to rubble, that will probably never be rebuilt, some of them. That the large amount of territory that has been lost already, never to go back to Kiev control. The likely more to come. And these there was some reporting over the weekend I saw where one of these groups that does some of these satellite has access to the satellite information, civilian satellite technology. They were able to search all through a number of different Ukrainian major cities, and they were by this technology are able to actually count how many graves have been dug and how many bodies have been buried in these military cemeteries throughout at various parts of Ukraine that are still under Kiev control. And the number was somewhere close to 700,000. And listen, we know from reporting that you've seen on this channel that many of the soldiers never get burials because they're literally blown to pieces and they don't even get the body parts to send back. A lot of them are they can't get them back because before they can retrieve the bodies, the Russian has moved the front line up there. The number could be 800,000, 900,000, maybe 1 million. I've heard some reports of that. It's plausible. I don't know what the actual number is, but it is massive. It is massive. All you need to do is just do a quick Google search for Ukrainian military cemeteries, and you will probably see page upon page upon page of different views in different cities all over the place. So you don't have to take my word for anything. You can see it physically with your own eyes, that the massive, massive costs to the Ukraine side. And we're talking about how we can, quote, enrich ourselves off of it. And listen, this was Biden from the beginning. This is like in the second month of the war, from March of 2022, when he laid out this really emotional speech that really got a lot of the Ukrainians rallied up at the time, when he basically laid out why we do what we do.
Ukraine will never be a victory for Russia, for free people refused to live in a world of hopelessness and darkness. We will have a different future, a brighter future, rooted in democracy and principles, hope and light, of decency and dignity, of freedom and possibilities. For God's sake, this man cannot remain in power.
Freedom, democracy, hope, all of these grand words, so that everybody in the United States and all over the Western world, everybody wants to get behind, because we, of course, demonized Vladimir Putin in his unprovoked war. There was no reason for it. He just woke up one morning and just said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and just attack the country next to me. That's the way we're projecting it. And so, of course, anyone who's that evil, and then when our side is filled with all of this soaring rhetoric, my goodness, we have to support them, of course, because in our minds, it can't be that our leaders know that this war could have been avoided, that this war could have been off-ramped at any time, and we haven't taken any action. That would be immoral, especially if our motivation was economics for us. We would never take action that just disregards this slaughter of human life on a scale that has never occurred on our side since World War II. And even then, just think, we suffered a total of 400,000 troops, American troops, killed in action and died during World War II. 400,000. So that's probably about half of what the tiny country of Ukraine has suffered so far in a war that has lasted less time than World War II did. Let that sink in for a minute. And of course, Americans aren't going to, we care about that. So it's incomprehensible to our brains that our leaders would have a chance to end the war and wouldn't take it, and would prosecute a war because the financial gain for us, not worrying about the dead people over there. Your brain can't get around that. So it's just not true. Well, I'm going to show you one more clip here. This is Victoria Nuland, who was made very infamous because she was at the heart of the beginning of this back in it's 2013 even, but famously in early 2014 in Kiev, when she was one of her phone calls was intercepted, where she's talking with another member of the diplomatic corps there, and they're already talking about how this illegally elected government that we didn't like, we're talking about who's going to replace the leader already. And then we were facilitating a famous picture of her literally going around to the protesters against the legally elected government, handing out cookies and a bunch of other stuff. So now then, she was, I think at the time, the Assistant Secretary of State when this clip was made here. And first of all, she tries the Biden play to talk about the money, but then watch where it goes.
This is not just about Ukraine. If we don't stop Putin in Ukraine, he will keep going. And autocrats and tyrants all around the world will take comfort and think that they too can chunk off a piece of their neighbor. And by the way, we have to remember that the bulk of this money is going right back into the U.S. economy to make those weapons, including good-paying jobs in some 40 states across the United States.
See, when they keep saying stuff like this, they must think that the American people care more about cash than they do about what's right and wrong, about helping people. But just to cover the bases, they'll talk about that too. They'll throw those words out there like she did at the beginning, like, you know, the tyrants all over the world, they can't be allowed to do. This was not unprovoked. You can disagree with what Putin did. And I have said that attacking into Ukraine was not the only solution here. They had other avenues available. They could have done more things economically. They could have done more things diplomatically, but he chose not to. But to say it was unprovoked is closing your eyes and just not wishing to see what was there. As I've said too many times, if Russia or China were trying to make a military alliance with Mexico and said, it's just a defensive alliance, don't worry about it, it's no big deal, we would never under any circumstances accept that. And if they went ahead and did it anyway, it's almost certain we would use military force to prevent it, just like Russia did. And so to expect them to act differently than we would on their border when they have spent, since 2008 warning about it, you know, it's unrealistic. So there was provocation. It wasn't out of nowhere. And so when Putin is doing what he thinks he needs to do to defend his country, but what he has not done is attack other countries besides the one on his border in order for his security. We do that all the time. And when we say we do it, we have always believed it's been for all these good reasons. Well, now then you see, here's Lindsey Graham saying it out loud. Have you heard any chorus of people pushing back? Have you heard all of these leaders and Republicans and Democrats and elected leaders and other officials? Have you heard an outcry of people that, you know, my gosh, I can't believe he would say something like that. It's untrue. I haven't. I've seen a handful of people. I tweeted about it myself. I've been upset that they said that out loud, but no officials that I've seen have said a word. Why is that? What does that tell you? That tells you that he's not alone. That tells you that he felt safe in saying that. And so far, he's been proven right in terms of how he can say it safely. Because you've had Victoria Nuland saying the same thing and all these other officials I just mentioned. Now, it remains to be seen what the Trump administration is going to do. So far, they have said that they were going to end it. Trump ran on that, and I certainly hope that he makes good on that pledge and from day one immediately starts to cease fire, because that's what we should do. We should end the war now. Biden shouldn't even wait. He shouldn't even take one more day. He shouldn't wait till January 20th. He should say, all right, Trump's coming in. He's going to do this. There's no point in taking any more action, no more provocative action. Let's just stop this issue now. Stop sending any more weapons. Stop sending, giving any more permission for long-range weapons to be used, which could potentially escalate the war. If you watched the show earlier today, there's a real risk of escalating this, and we could literally have a European-wide continental war. That is very much real. Go back and watch that. But so that we don't risk that, then that's what we ought to do. End the war now, and then there's a seamless transition on January 2nd. It remains to be seen what they're going to do. But I fear that there are a lot of people that are agreeing about the money, and they're worried about the money drying up. And if Trump doesn't keep, supporting Ukraine, that maybe some of these billions of dollars are going to slow down. But listen, it won't make any difference. The war is over. It's lost. It's only a matter of time until we find out how bad the Ukraine side the final result will be. What is the final score? What is the final body count? What is the final city count? What is the final square kilometer count that they will have lost? Those are the only things that are still to be determined. And in large measure, that will depend on what we do in between now and January 20th or January 20th forward. Because the longer we ignore these realities and keep up this soaring rhetoric that's totally divorced from reality, we're going to increase the cost to Ukraine in all those categories. And if you're just worried about money, man, maybe they could just rebuild a bunch of bridges and roads in America, or some of our infrastructure, our port facilities, airports, a lot of things you can spend that money on that'll help America, that will create jobs and leave us all better because of it. If you just have to spend money, do it on something that makes sense. Because what no one's talking about so far is once this war is done, let's say that Trump does negotiate it and it gets it off the table, what do you think is going to happen next? There is going to be a massive bill that somebody's going to have to pay to start rebuilding Ukraine. Doubt very seriously that Russia is going to pony up to be providing anything to the part of Ukraine that they won't have control over. They already have been rebuilding their part, by the way. I don't know if you're aware of that, but like Mariupol, that city, one of the first ones to fall, whole portions that have already been rebuilt. They'll probably do the same thing in the other portions that they have under their control whenever this thing is over. But the portions that they don't control, everybody's going to be looking to Uncle Sam. You're going to be spending a lot more money on there. So this is not over in terms of the money being spent by any stretch, but we don't need to have Ukrainians die in the process to get it done. And as someone who joined our nation's armed forces to defend America, I just find it reprehensible that our leaders are so focused on cash that they don't even care about anything about moral. And the moral aspect is supposed to be one of the bigger reasons why people serve, and while folks who wore the uniform like me are willing to sacrifice their lives because they believe that their leaders are doing the right thing and that they have higher values and morals and character commensurate with someone who's willing to sacrifice their life. And maybe that's one of the reasons why we're having such a hard time with recruiting right now. Because when people hear guys like Lindsey Graham and no one talks them down, or, former Assistant Secretary of State Victoria Nuland talking about how this is all about jobs, who wants to go and serve in that? Who wants to go and risk your life so that somebody else can get a job? That's not what the military is supposed to do. But that's where we are right now, folks. And I just felt really strongly that I needed to come on and set the record straight on some of this stuff and point out what's going on. And hopefully more people, once they're aware of just what our senior leaders are doing and how far we've fallen here, that maybe the support for this absurd and obscene war that cannot be won will dry up and evaporate. And at least they'll say, well, I guess we better move on to something different. It would be right if they would do the right thing for the right reason. I have no hope for that. But maybe enough pressure can be brought to where they'll do the right thing for their own financial incentives, if that's the way it comes down to. Anything that's going to get the war over, end the escalation risk that we have, and preserve the lives of those Ukrainian people who are still living, who are going to be desperately needed to rebuild that country for decades to come. They've already lost a whole generation of men. Don't make that price even higher. Do the right thing while we still have a chance. Thank you very much. That's your deep dive today. And I'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode of Daniel Davis Deep Dive. But also to remind you, we actually have Doug McGregor at noon tomorrow. Always one of our favorite features that we have every week. Everybody loves to hear what Doug's got to say. And I promise you, you'll want to see that tomorrow at noon. Thanks. And I'll see you on Daniel Davis Deep Dive then.